Hey, what's up guys, it's DarkArmedDuelist and today doing an Elemental Hero Electrum Ftk deck profile. So I'm really excited to see you guys because this deck was actually suggested to me by one of my patrons, Izzy. And this deck is a super cool deck that revolves around using your copies of Elemental Hero Electrum to be able to shuffle back your banished cards over and over again to be able to loop your copy of Gustav Max, to be able to use its effect to FTK the opponent, which is super cool to be able to use cards like Fusion Gate and Chain Material to make this work. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description in a single video, getting a signed cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron. And definitely give Izzy some love down in the comments down below for suggesting such an awesome deck. So let's get straight on into this one guys. So first off, we're going to be playing a single copy of Machior the Destructor. This card is extremely important for the deck, along with another card that we're going to be playing later on. But this card is really good for the deck because if this card is sent from the monster zone to the graveyard, you can activate one trap card from your hand this turn, which is extremely important because we want to be able to activate our copy of Chain Material so that we can fusion summon by using cards from the deck, which is very important for this build. This card is really easy to get out on your side of the field with cards like Summoner Monk, and even get it out on your side of the field with Awalt because it is a warrior monster. And then it's as simply as linking it away to be able to go in for that copy of Chain Material. We then play 3 copies of Neospatian Connector. This card is extremely important for the deck as well because this card helps you get into your copy of Awalt, because when this card is normal summoned to your side of the field, you can special summon a Neospatian monster from your deck to your side of the field, which is always going to be your copy of Aqua Dolphin, which is going to give you 2 warriors on your side of the field so you can go in for your copy of Awalt. This is very important so that you can go in for combo, and essentially getting into your copy of Neospatian Connector is full combo, which is really insane. We then play 3 copies of Summoner Monk. Summoner Monk is very important for the deck as well because this card helps you just get all sorts of monsters on your side of the field that are level 4, so you can go in for Alan Bersham, so you can go in for a search of a spell or trap for the deck so you can get the exact piece that you're missing for the FTK. So this card is very important in the deck because you can actually Summoner Monk for a Summoner Monk, and we have plenty of ways to be able to use cards like Divine Sword Phoenix Blade to be able to constantly feed the copies of Summoner Monk so we can get a bunch of level 4s on the field to make Math Mech Alan Bersham so that we can actually search out spells and traps from the deck, which is very cool for this build. I then play a single copy of Armageddon Knight. Armageddon Knight is always a great card in decks like this to be able to get the exact monster you need in the graveyard when you need it, for say like a copy of Zaphros the Elite, so you can get another level 4 on your side of the field so you can make number 60, which is extremely important for this build. This card is really good overall in the deck to be able to just send the exact monster you need to the graveyard when you need it. We then play a single copy of Zaphros the Elite. Zaphros the Elite is in the deck because it's very good to be able to bounce cards that are soft once per turn back to the hand and then be able to use them again. And this card is just very important in the deck to be able to send a graveyard off your copy of Armageddon Knight so you can get another level 4 on the field. We then play a single copy of Planet Pathfinder. This card is so we can get to our copy of Fusion Gate extremely easily. It's summonable off your copy of Summoner Monk directly from the deck, so this card is very easy to get on the field. Then just tribute this card to be able to search out your copy of your Fusion Gate so that you can start fusing from deck by using Chain Material and Fusion Gate. We then play a single copy of Rescue Ferret. Rescue Ferret is really interesting for this deck and a really cool card for this particular build. I really like this card as a tech card, and it has the ability you can shuffle this card that you control into the deck and then special summon monsters from your deck except Rescue Ferret, whose total level equal exactly 6 to zones link monsters point to, but those summoned monsters have their effects negated. Also, destroy them during the end phase. But you can still use them as link material, which is really cool to help you climb into more plays. So this card is a definite one-of in the build, and so that I can use the effect of Rescue Ferret, I'm actually playing a single copy of Crosskeeper, which works with the elemental hero monsters we're playing in this deck, and also is a level 2 monster to work with a copy of Rescue Ferret, so you can summon out a copy of a level 2 and a level 4 to your side of the field, which is really cool, especially since we're using Selene and Soryuja in the extra deck. We can actually summon out those monsters to zones of those monsters point to because they mainly point down. We then play a single copy of Codebreaker 0 Day. 0 Day is really cool for the deck because it helps you get another level 4 on your side of the field. It's just a great card in this particular deck. We're then playing for the elemental heroes. We're playing one each of Bubble Man, Avion, a copy of Bursenatrix, and a single copy of Clayman. This is so that we can go into our copy of Electrum. They're very important in this particular build because you have to use all 4 of these monsters to go in for your copy of Electrum, but it's not that big of a deal to be able to do once you get your copy of Chain Material on board and live with your copy of Fusion Gate, because then you can just send them from deck and banish them, which is really cool. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Rhoda. Rhoda's really good in the deck to get the exact warrior that you need when you need it. So we're definitely playing this card as a 1-of in this deck. We're playing a single copy of Terraforming because we need to get to our copy of Fusion Gate as quickly as possible so that we can go in for the FTK. We're then playing 3 copies of Temple of the Kings. I feel like this card is extremely consistent in the deck, especially since all you need is this card, Machior the Destructor, to be able to use your copy of Chain Material, which is very important because you basically get the effect that you can activate 1 trap card the turn is set when you have this card on your side of the field, which is very important with your copy of Temple of the King, because either you want to get your copy of Machior or this card to make it so that you can use on the very first turn your copy of Chain Material, which is really important for this deck. We then play 3 copies of Fusion Gate. Fusion Gate is one of the best cards in the entire deck, and the main way that this deck works. This card is really cool because during your main phase, the turn player can fusion summon 1 fusion monster from their extract by banishing fusion materials mentioned on it from their hand or field. But with your copy of Chain Material, you can actually banish materials from the deck, which is really cool. And this is not a once per turn, which makes it so that you can actually loop over and over again. And it's a constant polymerization, which is super cool for this card to be able to do and helps you go in for the FTK. This card, your copy of Chain Material, is the main way that you're actually going to be performing the FTK, which is really cool. We then play for the equip spells. I'm playing a single copy of Living Fossil. This card is a monster reborn if we draw it, which is really cool. 1 copy of Divine Sword Phoenix Blade. This card is really neat to be able to recur over and over again so that we can actually use the copy of Summoner Monk, and it's just really good overall in the deck. We play 2 copies of Tailwind of Gusto. This card's neat for the deck, and I really like this card because it actually has a really good effect. As you manage this card from the graveyard and then discard a wind monster to add a Gusto spell or trap from your deck to your hand, which will feed your copy of Summoner Monk. We're never using any of the effects on this card but that, because when you summon a Zold, you can search out Avion, and then you can use that effect to be able to discard the copy of Avion to grab another copy of this card to hand, which will feed your copy of Summoner Monk, which is super cool about this card. I really like with the copy of Divine Sword Phoenix Blade because it does help you use your copies of Summoner Monk over and over again. We then play a single copy of Broken Bamboo Sword. This card is really good in the deck as well with the Bamboo Sword package. We then play 3 copies of Cursed Bamboo Sword. Cursed Bamboo Sword is extremely important for the deck as well, because if this card does touch the graveyard, you can add a Bamboo Sword card from your deck to your hand, which is a great effect to be able to use on this card, and it is an additional equip spell in the deck. We then play 3 copies of Golden Bamboo Sword. This card is basically Pot of Greed when you have a copy of a Bamboo Sword equipped spell on your side of the field, which is very easy to do because your copy of a Zold will send from your deck to the graveyard the Cursed Bamboo Sword and then let you add Broken Bamboo Sword from deck to hand. Or if you already have the copy of the Broken Bamboo Sword, you can actually add from deck to hand the Golden Bamboo Sword to get you a draw 2, which is really cool. And the best thing about this deck is we're actually playing 5 different equip spells, so even if you draw into one, you have plenty of ways to still go off with your copy of a Zold. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're just going to be playing 3 traps, and that's going to be 3 copies of Chain Material. This is the only trap that you need in the entire deck. This card is really insane combo with Fusion Gate because it has the ability, anytime you fusion summon a monster this turn, you can banish cards from your side of the field, deck, hand, or graveyard as Fusion Material that are listed on the Fusion card, and use them as Fusion Material monsters. And you cannot attack during the turn you activated this card, and if you use this card for a Fusion Summon, the Fusion Summon monster is destroyed during the end phase, but that's not that big of a deal because we're basically just going to use Electrum and FTK the opponent by looping through Gustav Max, which is really cool. This card is really neat for the deck and basically the way the deck works with your copy of Fusion Gate, but you want to use cards like Machior or Temple of the King to be able to activate this card on the very first turn, which is easy to pull off with this deck. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Elemental Hero Electrum, which Electrum is how we pull off this entire FTK. This card is a very simple effect that when this card is fusion summoned, you can shuffle all banished cards into the decks, which is the main effect that we're going to be using on this card. So basically with Fusion Gate, you're going to be banishing those materials, and then you're going to immediately shuffle them right back into the deck, basically giving you a free copy of Electrum, which is really cool about this deck, and I really love that interaction. But this card is super cool because it is a level 10 monster. So you can put 2 of them on the field, make a Gustav Max, burn for 2,000, and then make a copy of Elemental Hero Gaia, getting it off your side of the field, and then basically loop through it all over again, which is really cool. Speaking of Elemental Hero Gaia, we are playing a single copy of Elemental Hero Gaia. You could play 2 copies of this, but I'm just playing 1 in this particular build for another tech card I'm playing in this deck. The only thing that matters about this card is it does take a Earth monster, so you're going to be using your copy of Gustav Max plus a copy of Electrum that's in the graveyard that you detached off the Gustav Max to be able to summon out this card, so you can banish that copy of Gustav Max and recycle it with a copy of Electrum, which is really cool. We then play a single copy of Elemental Hero The Shining. This card does come in handy to be able to banish 2 copies of Electrum from the graveyard, which is really neat because it takes any Elemental Hero monster plus a light monster. You can also banish your copies of your Elemental Hero Gaia to be able to recycle it with a copy of Electrum. But something to keep in mind as you're playing this deck is you always want to keep at least 1 copy of Electrum in the extra deck, so that you can basically loop through all over again unless you're putting them back with that copy that you just put on the field, which is really cool. But it's really important to be able to keep a copy of Electrum live at all times when you're playing this deck. We then play a single copy of Elemental Hero Core. Core is really cool for this deck as well because it does take 3 Elemental Hero monsters. It doesn't matter what you put into this card, it just matters that there are 3 Elemental Heroes. So you can banish 2 copies of Electrum from the graveyard that are just not going to be played anymore, that you need to banish so that you can put them back in the extra deck with the 3rd copy of Electrum. But it's really important to be able to use this card to be able to recycle multiple heroes by banishing them and then summoning out Electrum to be able to put them back into the extra deck. So this card is really important for the deck. Its effect does not matter, but it's really important that it does take 3 Elemental Hero monsters. You can play a copy of Gaia if you want to over this card and play 2 copies of Gaia and no copy of Core, but I really like the copy of Core because it does put 3 back instead of just 2 with your copy of Gaia, banishing 2 copies to be able to summon out the Gaia. We then play a single copy of Gustav Max. Gustav Max is going to burn for 2,000 over and over again. It is a once per turn, but it is a soft once per turn, so if you can loop through this card over and over again, you can actually FTK the opponent because you just summon out this card 4 separate times and burn your opponent for 8,000 to be able to instantly win the game, which is super cool, and it's really consistent to do with this deck. And then play a single copy of Alum Bursham. The reason we're playing this card is for its 4 effect. If you put 4 materials on this card, you can use its 4 effect to be able to add a spell or trap from your deck to your hand, which is usually going to be your copy of Chain Material, Fusion Gate, or your copy of Temple of the King to be able to use your FTK. We then play a single copy of number 60. Number 60 can either let you draw 2, discard 1, let you double the attack of a monster, or the effect that we're going to be using on this card is that it's a monster reborn, so you can actually detach a copy of, say, Armageddon Knight, and then immediately bring that Armageddon Knight back to the field to be able to get another dark monster in the graveyard, which is really awesome for this build. We then play a single copy of Soryuja. Soryuja is really important for the deck because it helps you dig into the deck to get the exact card that you need. You really only need a single copy of this card to help you dig into the deck. It also lets you special summon a monster from the hand, which can help you make rank 4s. We then play 2 copies of Selene. Selene is really cool in this deck because it helps you summon out a monster from the graveyard like your copy of Summoner Monk to be able to loop through your cards over and over again, especially since you're getting back that copy of Summoner Monk that you're usually going to send to graveyard off the Armageddon Knight and then bring it back with your copy of Selene, which is really important. We then play a single copy of Akasha Magician. Akasha Magician is really cool for this deck because it does put a spellcaster on board so you can make your copy of Selene. We then play a single copy of Codebreaker, Virus Swordsman. This card is really cool for the deck because it does summon out the copy of Zero Day from the deck if it's co-linked, which is very important for this deck to get you more level 4s on your field. And then play a single copy of Azul, which is one of the most important cards in the deck. If you open up a copy of your Neospatian Connector, you can just normal summon out that card and you pretty much have the FTK if your opponent doesn't interrupt you, which is really cool because you just normal summon out the copy of your Neospatian Connector, summon out Aqua Dolphin, make this card, and then you're pretty much off and you pretty much won the game, which is really cool. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy. This deck is really fun to be able to play. If you guys have never played a deck like this, I highly recommend it. It's really interesting, all the different combos that you can actually pull off with this deck and how easy it is to pull off the FTK with this particular build. And it's a really interesting deck that can be built a bunch of different ways, but I feel like this is like one of the best ways and most consistent ways to actually play this particular deck. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.